Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And we are talking of the Koli culture, Mumbai's Fisherfolk and their history. Um, I just need to give you a brief background of where we are coming from when we talk about the Kolis or any community that we have been studying, because I've been studying two communities at the same time. Um, this entire presentation is very long and very elaborate and all that, so I'll try and skip some parts as we go along. Um, you know, you could look at this question, and that's the background from where we are coming. The purpose, the need for asking this question is that I come from a theoretical background on decolonizing our theoretical frame. You see, what really happens is that in our kind of countries across the world, we have some very different experiences. We have some very different realities that we deal with the environment with that we deal with. And we have been trained academically to try and fit all this, to explain all this in a frame that is more dominantly, it is Euro-American. And then when something doesn't fit into it, we are supposed to assume that that's an exception. But we find that treating it like an exception is very dangerous for us. So there is, across the globe, we have decolonizing theory as a very important aspect that is emerging. And then, of course, we are then talking of Southern theory. So I'm part of that group of people who think in this manner. So this question that I'm posing to you is one of those aspects of decolonizing theory. So, the fact that I have to ask you whether I can speak in Marathi, Hindi, Malayalam, Gujarati, Urdu, or do I have to speak in English for everybody to understand, and that everybody will not understand. It is assumed that most of you will understand, although we know that all our English is accented and no Englishman is going to accept our English as authentic. So this is a problem. And dealing with these communities, we encounter this problem over and over again. And it is in community studies and communication studies that we begin to face this situation. And it is very exciting, this journey of trying to decolonizing our own minds, because before we get others involved in this, it is more important for us to change our own thinking. So we'll begin with the first question. When we say Kolis, one of the first questions that came to us is, where are these Kolis? And when we think of Kolis, I don't have to tell you, we are thinking of a certain kind of image which mostly has come through popular culture and popular media, like cinema and theater and all that. So our first job was to find out where these Kolis are. So I'm going to quickly run through a whole section of Google Maps, and I want you to look at the blue side, which is the sea, which is where the Fisher Koli is located, or is supposed to be somewhere near the sea. And I want you to see how the city has changed and how this blue is disappearing from around the Kolis. But we'll come to that a little later. But right now, I just need you to look at the sheer expanse of the Kolis in Mumbai. These are the old 7 islands. Now, this is in A ward, which is towards the south of Mumbai. So there are 2 of them here, Kolaba Koliwada and Badwar Park. And then in D ward, you have Girgaon Chowpatty, which is a very small Koliwada. And you will find these located here. You can see this. This somewhere here is the Kolaba Koliwada. Then you have this, the Mandvi Koliwada, and this small thing here. This is the near Valkeshwar and the Tarapurwala Aquarium. Somewhere here is a very, very small area of Koli fisher villages. Then you have the Sion Koliwada in F North. So after this Koliwada, you have straight away Sion. And it is invisible. You can't see Sion Koliwada anywhere. You don't see any blue anywhere. There is no water anywhere. And this is where is the only remnant of this is this Sion Koliwada Chowk. That's all that is remaining. You have an overhead water tank here, and you have got all these things here, but this is all that Sion Koliwada is left. And this is what we are more familiar with, Guru Tegh Bahadur Nagar. And of course, this is Wellinkar, etc. Now we come to the Worli Koliwada. This is G South, G North. These are the ward offices. This is one single region, Worli Koliwada, Dharavi Koliwada, and Mahim Koliwada. And you see them here. You find that, this is our famous Guru Krupa hotel. The samosas and the gulab jamuns. This is your Worli fort, and going right round like this from here, right up like this in this way, and then coming here, this is your Bandra fort. So this is where, and Dharavi is somewhere here. So we'll come to that shortly. This is your Worli Koliwada. This is a Worli fort, and we will enter this later. This is the Baba Sahib Varadikar Chowk. And this Baba Sahib Varadikar was a Worli Koli who was among the first Kolis to become a mayor. This is in the 1960s. He was a mayor of Mumbai. This is Dharavi village, and you can see this is the sea here. This is this small Mithi Nadi which is completely choking and choked now. And this is Dharavi village. Now this is Dharavi police station. This is Sion. This is the Sion fort. Now we need to understand this geography a little better. We will come to that again. But this is where you have Dharavi. Then we again come to Mahim Koliwada. This is the Mahim fish market, and you can see that they are completely at the sea. You know, this is the Khadi bridge, etc. This is where the Mahim Koliwada is. This is our Mahim fort. The next is at H West, Khardanda Carter Road, Chimbai Koliwada, and this is near Bandra Bandstand, near Perry Cross Road, and there you are. This is the Chimbai Koliwada. But if you actually go there, you will have to really look for it because it is not easily visible. And this is the Chuim village. But it is not as big as these other Koliwadas, but it is definitely quite expansive because of the sea, which is very close to them. Then you have, this is your Perry Cross Road. And I want you to look at this distance from here. And this is the Jarimari temple. And the significance of Jarimari temple and other temples we will discuss later. I'll come to that. But I need you to look at this 1 hour travel on the road to reach the Jarimari temple. And this is your Koli fisherman here. Now we go to K West, Warsaw Koliwada and Juhu Koliwada. And this is located here. This is our Juhu Koliwada. And as you go up, you have the Warsaw beach and you have got the Warsaw Koliwada. And this is very close. So the fish life, the fisher folk life, you can see it here in these two places. This is very close to the sea. You have here the mud fort. This is Turbe Koliwada. This is right on the other side. And look at it. This is the Koliwada. And this is how it is. And this is where you have got the sea on this side. This is Cheetah Camp Jetty. And this is the Koliwada space where the Koliwada is. This is the Trombay Koliwada cricket ground, just for you to have a reference point. P North, you have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Koliwadas. Okay, Mud Koliwada, Bhati Gav, Manori, Erangal, Malwani, and Shivajinagar. And look at these distances. Now, this is the Koliwada at Mud, and then this is the Koliwada Road, Patilwadi. You can see a lot of, this is Warsaw fishing, and you can see the water coming in. You have got sea here. This is the Manori Marve beach, and you can see the Koliwadas are thriving in this region. Now, if I am at Mud, and if I want to go to Gorai, this particular Koliwada, by road, it takes me this much time to cross all of this. It is 1 hour 49 minutes. If I travel on that day, this is the time it took. And this is how it goes. This is how it goes from here. I want you to remember the geography here. Now, this was a Koliwada at one point, but it is now completely surrounded by land. This is our original mud fort Koliwada. This is mud. This is the Aksa beach. And we are at the Our Lady of Our Second Church. This is the Malad Shivaji Nagar Panchavati. This is one Koliwada, but it is, you can see again, completely landed. It is landlocked. There is no water here. It is quite far from any water source. Then at P South, we have got near Chincholi Bandar, Chincholi Naka between Malad and Goregaon. And this is the Chincholi Koliwada. You don't see any blue anywhere on the screen on the map. There is no blue at all. This is the Chincholi Koliwada. Then we are moving further north. This is R Central, Exar Koliwada, Borivali West, Gorai Koliwada, Borivali West. And we saw this earlier. This is the distance. This is a physical distance that we have to travel. And then there is R South, Charkop Village Koliwada at Kandivali. Again, This is the Charkop Kolivada, but there is absolutely almost no water anywhere nearby. They are completely cut off from all water sources. So what this geography tells us is that a number of Kolivadas in Mumbai are choked in the sense that there is land all across them. They have been filled up all on all sides. And a Koli, a fisherman without fish or the sea or a river or some source of fish is not a fisherman. He has to become something else, or he has to migrate. He has to move out, or he has to change his livelihood. Those are the options they have. Whereas those Kolis who are closer to the sea, they are constantly facing urban situations where, like for instance, the Worli sea face, the route which has come up from there, and how the waves break and how the sewage comes in, etc. These are issues, environmental issues, which are here, and they are across the globe. It is not as if this is only happening in our country. There is something happening everywhere. That is what the geography is all about. Now I need you to look at, as we go deeper into the Kolivadas, we begin to see what it is that we are trying to understand here. We first started our study with Mumbai Devi. Now you can see this is Mumbai Devi here today. But this Mumbai Devi was somewhere here. Okay, this is where the Mumbai port is, the Victoria docks, and you have got our Victoria terminus somewhere here. So you will find that the original Mumbai Devi was somewhere here. And when the terminus was supposed to be built, this temple was moved here. And you can see that it is almost equidistant from the sea on both sides. Now this Mumbai Devi, when we asked the Kolis that, okay, in Mumbai, where is your worship pattern and where do you go? So they said the Kolivada in Mumbai Devi. That's where we are, and that's what we like to see. Now, when we looked at Mumbai Devi, we found that this is Mumbai Devi. She is out of 3 statues or 3 places of worship in the temple. We found Mumbai Devi sitting to the extreme left. It is a volcanic rock, very typical of Koli worship. You will find a mask on it, and there are these beautiful flower designs. And this is something which is there in all Koli worship. In fact, mother goddesses in Mumbai and elsewhere in Maharashtra are worshipped in this pattern. You will find the symbols of Shiva worship there. There will be a moon, and there will be a Trishul, and these things will be there. So you do find that Mumbai Devi is like this, but the central goddess in Mumbai Devi temple today is a marble statue of Durga. The pujaris are from north of India, and the aarti which is done is the aarti of Amba and Durga. And you will not find a Koli at Mumbai Devi. So the Kolis no longer go to Mumbai Devi. So when we ask them, okay, what do you do then? Where do you do all your rituals, etc.? So they said, yeah, Mumbai Devi is no longer, we don't go to Mumbai Devi. It is too far away, and it is no longer our goddess. So that was a surprise for us, that although Mumbai Devi, Koli, and we think that, okay, this is it. The Kolis have moved away from Mumbai Devi. They seldom go there. Even if they go there, they don't really care much about it. For instance, there are some rituals like shaving off your head, the child's head when the child is of some age, 1 year, 2 years. This is done in front of the goddess, but this is no longer done at Mumbai Devi. And you will also find that according to a very interesting tradition, the North Indians, when they come into Mumbai, it is a tradition in India that when you go as a migrant into another place for a livelihood, you go and visit the Grama Devata. So you will find that the North Indians, they think Mumbai Devi is our Grama Devata. So she is the village deity of Mumbai. So they come to Mumbai Devi, they pay their respects with their wives and children, etc. And for them, this is an auspicious beginning. So you will find a lot of North Indians there, a lot of people from Bengal, people from Uttar Pradesh, Bihar. But a Koli is almost, not there. You will not find Koli worship, etc. happening there. So where did the Kolis go? Because we were kind of worried that, where did the Kolis disappear suddenly? And we were really worried that how do we find them? So they told us, oh, we go to Khada Devi. Khada Devi is here. This is Khada Devi temple. And Khada Devi is located, now you can see this, the distance between Khada Devi and Mumbai Devi is quite a lot. And this is the Kolaba police station. And inside the Kolaba police station, we have this watermark, which is a very old watermark. And it is just next to this temple just next to this, that you have the Koli Khada Devi. And Vandana Kshirsagar is the woman who you will find there. She claims that she is the 13th generation of worshippers at this, and she's got the right to worship. She stays there, and she has children, and they are living there. uh, do the Kolis go there? Well, sometimes. But something very strange has happened in the last 20 years, which is that a Parsi couple, they were not having children. So they went to Khada Devi and they offered palna. I forget the word for that. So they offered a palna there and they had a child. So when you enter Khada Devi temple, you will find the entire ceiling and the entire temple covered with these small cradles. Yeah, palna, cradles. So they are covered with these small replicas of cradles because it is believed that if you don't get a child, you go to Khada Devi, you will get a child. So now the Kolis don't go there either. And they worship some goddess or some god which is in their own village. And Khada Devi also is not a preferred goddess anymore. You will find that this picture shows you, these are all the Kolivadas, and when you look at them, these are all the dargahs which are around. You will find that a Koli village and a dargah are somehow integrated into each other. They are always together. And you will come to that later. You will also find that Kolis and Vetal Dev, this Vetar is a very interesting character in these temples. Now, who is this Vetar? The Kolis traditionally worship mother goddesses, and those goddesses are called the Sat Asra. These are malevolent goddesses. So if you don't worship them, they will do you bad. And they are water goddesses. And they are worshipped for everything to do with water, which means she worships Sat Asra. When the child is born, you worship Sat Asra. And Vetar is the brother, in some cases, or the husband of these 7 women. So there will be these 7 stones with beads as eyes, and next to that will be an 8th stone a little further away, and that will be called the Vetal. So this Vetal temple is a very important temple as far as the Kolis are concerned. This deity is very important for them because he is like the guardian of the Sat Asras, and then the Sat Asras emerge, and then the goddesses are protected. And then there is a very interesting god, which again you will find along the Korivara. This is called the Baman Dev. This Baman Dev, we at first thought it was the Brahman Dev, but it is apparently not the Brahman Dev, it is Vamana, Vishnu's avatar of Vamana. And we have not been able to find out why they worship Vamana. There is no explanation, we don't have an explanation. But we do know that along the Kolivadas, you do find the Baman Dev very significantly in these places. Now I want you to understand how this Koli world looks like. You see, we are used to a land world which the British gave us, and we are looking at talukas and districts and that kind of thing. This is what we are constantly trained. If I ask you for your address, what you are going to give me is this kind of a pin code, etc. But now think of a Koli. For the Koli, the land part is a place of rest. It is a place where you dry the fish. The Koli fisherman considers the sea as his place of living and considers land as a place where you rest, where you dry your fish, where you have your family, and then you go back to the sea. So 15 days in a fortnight you will have about 13 or 12 days at sea, and 2 days this Koli fisherman comes home. And who is at home? At home is the wife. The wife takes down all these fish. She is the one knitting all those nets. She is the one who is going out into the market and selling the fish. And this is a cultural thing, that the females take care of everything that is to be done on land, and the men take care of everything that is to be done at sea. And these behavior patterns have been seriously disrupted over the last 50, 60 years. And that has seriously affected how the Koli family is going to look at itself and look at this world. So now we are going to come to Worli. We will enter Worli from how the Koli would have entered it. So the Koli would have entered it from the sea, and first thing, he would have a Vetal temple. So when you enter Koliwada, Worli Koliwada from the seaside, you will find the first here is the Vetal temple. And if you, just for your reference, this is our Worli fort. This is the fort, this is the kind of thing which people used to geography in land terms would build. But people who are used to the sea and looking at geography in those terms, this is important. So the Vetal temple comes first. This is the Vetal temple at Koliwada. And this is all it is. So you will find that there are stones here, pieces of stone. These are some forms which have been given by applying these saffron things. But these are forms, and they are not they don't have any significant architecture to them or any design. They are just stones, and they are depending on. There will be 7 of them. There are 7 goddesses, and there is at the end of it, at the end of this, there is a Vetal. So there is no specific stone called Vetal. There will be 7 and plus 1, 8. Then when you enter this, very typically again characteristic, you will find a church or something similar like this here. There is a cross or a church or something like that. This is what the church looks like at Worli at the top. Once you enter from there, you will find another very interesting aspect, which is that this is the fortress. And on this side here, this is the Astika brass band Pathak. Now here is this is our the Shiva temple, and in this you see this here Shri Papa Vimochaneshwar temple. You will find Shiva, a very important deity in the Worli Koliwadas, and it is a very, very big thing for the Koliwadas that they have worshipped Shiva. This is the Shiva deity. In the Koliwada itself in Worli, this temple dates back to 1904, 18th of August. And one of the interesting aspects of this temple, like in other temples in Koliwada, is that this temple was built by a Mestri. And that is the other community which I study, which is the Vishwakarma community. But I will not go into that just now. But these temples are very sophisticated works. They involve very sophisticated building, architecture, knowledge of stones, knowledge of wood, etc. And these are the Mestris who have built them. That man's name is there, the fact that the Mestri built it. This is how the Shiva is represented in the temple here. Now this is our overall Koliwada. This is the fish market. This is the the Mahavir temple. This is the Worli Koliwada fish market. Here at Lal Maidan, at this red location here, you will find a pier. And the Worli Koliwada pier is a very interesting pier. This particular dargah is a very interesting dargah. This is a grave, and it is a very interesting play on words. The Muslims call it pier, the Kolis call it veer. And veer are those people who died at sea. So this is that dargah in Koliwada in Worli. And in this place, the graves belong to 2 women. And this side, when you look at here on the left, this particular house, these are 2 women who are the caretakers of this dargah. So these are the 2 women who take care of this dargah, which has 2 female piers inside the graveyard. Now the first rite of worship at this dargah, the first rite of worship is to the Kolis. And the Koliwadas, all Koliwadas have what is called a Jamaat. A Jamaat is like a community meeting where all the patils, and these are families which are there for so many centuries. So these Jamaat will have a sarpanch or a patil, and it is in Worli there are 7 Jamaat, and these 7 patil, they have the first rite of worship at this dargah. And this worship is purely I don't know whether to call it Hindu, but it is definitely non-Muslim, because they offer peda, they offer coconut, then they offer agarbatti, and they worship. They do all this. That is the first rite. The worship begins with the Koli Sat Patil. And after the Koli Sat Patil worship is done, then they remove all of this. Those women there, they remove all of this, and then they lay the chadar, which is Islamic in a way. So they lay the chadar there. And the first Qawwali which is sung here is sung by the Qawwals from the Mahim Dargah. And that is how this starts. And when is this festival happening? This particular Pir When is this thing happening? The day is Hanuman Jayanti. Now, when we asked why Hanuman Jayanti, we don't have an answer. Why Hanuman Jayanti? But you will find that on Hanuman Jayanti in the evening, across that Kolivada, you will find Muslims coming in and offering their prayers here. In the night, if those of you are familiar with the Dadar area, there is a dargah in Dadar area, which is the Habshi Dargah. So these are Africans who are staying there, and their women worship in that dargah, and they sing African songs. They come and sing here at midnight on that day, on that night, at the night of Hanuman Jayanti. This is what happens at this dargah every year on Hanuman Jayanti. So two females are here in the grave, two females are worshipping. One of those females, just to give you a better idea, one of those females is from Miras. She was married into a Koli family, and the other female is a Christian Koli. The husband was Hindu, she was Christian. She married the Hindu, but she did not convert. So she remains Christian. But the sons, one of the sons, he converted to Islam. So now that Muslim Koli with his Muslim Koli wife from Miras and this Christian Koli from Worli, they have the right to worship this dargah. Now this is, once you enter from this place, now you are coming to Golfa Devi. Now, when we went there in 2004 and 2005, this was how Golfa Devi was, very crowded. There were three lumps of, some kind of a statue, you could call them, and they had very huge masks. They were about, 1.5 to 2 feet big masks. And this is how the goddesses looked. But we were very lucky because somewhere in 2006, when they were cleaning up the whole thing for an annual festival, there were these about 8 to 9 inches of this paint which they had put over the years on those whatever was inside, and they just peeled off. And when they peeled off, this is what emerged. They were actually these full-length standing goddesses, and they have the Chandra Surya, Chandra Surya, they will survive, and this is the goddess, etc. And these are the goddesses which emerged from behind those masks. So earlier, this was all a huge lump of saffron. There were eyes, 2 beads here, 2 beads here, 2 beads here, and then a huge mask which was put on the face. So the goddesses look really big. Now this is the form which has emerged. And these are 3 goddesses. And we find that, we'll again come to that these 3 goddesses and these forms, we have got the pictures, etc., but we still need to study these iconographically. And we have still not studied them iconographically. This is now the Golfa Devi temple. This is the outskirts, outside of the temple. This is the border of the temple, and these are the 3 goddesses. This is how the village looks. Now look at Harba Devi. Now one of these 3 goddesses here, this is Golfa Devi, this is Sakba Devi, and this is Harba Devi. Now why are these 3 here? She is a benevolent goddess. She is an extremely benevolent goddess, and she is a malevolent goddess. Now why malevolent goddess? Because she can do bad. So there is something called, asking for a kaul from a goddess. And this is a process which, I sat there for 15-20 days to understand what this was. And what we understood was that you ask a kaul from a benevolent goddess or from a malevolent goddess, depending on what you want. And, people have questions like, why am I losing so much money? Or why I'm not getting enough fish? Or why my daughter is not getting married? Or why is my son not well, and why is my father not, why does he have some disease or something? All these questions are answered by these goddesses here, right? Now look at the faces here, and then you can see the connection. Yeah. This is Harba Devi. Now remember that till 2006 we saw them like this. This is how we saw them till 2006. In 2006 we found, oh dear, they look like this, and then this is Harba Devi. And we have, I don't have the original pictures here, but this face actually the stone looks exactly like this. They are identical. And Harba Devi is here, and Harba Devi is here. This is Harba Devi at mud. We do not know, therefore, whether Harba Devi is a connection between mud and Worli. We do not know that. But we just know that this is Harba Devi, and this is how she looks. She is also standing. This is the huge temple of Harba Devi. These are more pictures. Now, when you look at Harba Devi, you find a similarity between how the worship is conducted here and how the worship is conducted at Worli. Now, this is a very interesting god, which we found only in 3 places in Mumbai. This is outside the Worli Koliwada. So this is Golfa Devi here. This is the Koliwada. This is Worli Point. When you come down here like this, you are exiting Worli Koliwada on this side. This is where you have this Chede Deva temple. We did not understand what this was. Chede Deva was a lump of stones, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. When we went there in 2004-06, it was a very small temple, completely ignored. Nobody was looking at it. Today it looks something like this. This is the size. So it was probably 1/10 of this size when we went there in 2006. But since then it has become this big. We found that a Chede Deva, and we asked them, what is this? Chede, Cheda, Chaida. They give all these different names. So they call it Chere Dev, Chede Dev, Chadavai Dev. They call all of these names. So this is at Worli. Then there are 2 more. One is Chereshwar temple at Mahul near Chembur, and one is the Chereshwar Mandir at Trombay. And these are big, very big. You can see that they are very old. They are not recent temples. This is how Chede Deva looks. All right. And it was only much later that we speculate that it could be this guy here. 965 to 975, Chadavai Deva. This is the only reference we have on that name. Otherwise, we don't know who this Chede Deva is, or why he is worshipped, or what is the background. The police are not able to tell us what this is. But this is the only reference we have on this particular deity. We go to section 3. What is this Koli all about? And these are the various meanings of the word Kol, from where the word Koli has come. And you will find some very significant aspects of it. There is a net, the planet Saturn, Shani, and then degraded warrior tribe, outcast, military order, barbarian, right? All of these words are significant, and we will see how these work out later. Now, these are the entries in the Koli, in the gazetteer. So you can see the Koli entries, the gazetteer entries, and you can see how they work out. There are several subgroups of Koli, and we found that Koli is a very generic term, and it can apply to several things. So it can apply, for instance, there is the Mahadev Koli. And if you look at this, I want you to look at this: Nashik, Pune, Ahmednagar, Thane districts. And this is what they worship. Okay, Vagdev, Maruti, Ram, Shiva, Krishna, Kalsubai, Jakubai, Satubai, Ranai, Kamalai. They worship all this, and their population, this is their population, how the population is grown. Then you have the Malhar Koli. Again, you will find them here. This Malhar Koli is very, very well known in Maratha times. And in the British regime, for instance, they are very well known. And you will find here that they are the hereditary keepers of Sinhagad, Torna, Rajgarh forts. And these were the members of the same community. Then you have Dhor Koli. Here you could look at, Tanaji Malusare, and it is speculated that he probably belonged to this same community. And he took the help of these people from this community to really climb the Sinhagad fort. Then you have the Dhor Kolis. Now you see Thane, Nashik, Dhule, Jalgaon, Kolhapur, Solapur. Now, throughout in these Kolis, you don't find anything to deal with fishermen and nothing to do with the sea. And then they come, this is the population which deals with the sea. And you will find that, okay, now this is something which, you can understand how this thing works. These are the Kolis. We found that they come from Arnara. And now you see them coming from the district in Raigad. And they come from the Raigad district. They were clearly fishing folk. Females undertaking activities such as grading, selling fish, drying them. Koli songs and dances are popular. This is the Koli that we know from our popular culture. And it is this Koli that inhabits all of those Koliwadas in Mumbai. So this is where, their primary worship here, you can see Khandobav, Jezuri, Ekviraf, Karla, principal deities. Now, why did these Kolis in such large numbers come here? One of the reasons was the tax which was levied by Angre, Kanoji Angre, in Raigad, in that entire region, and this tax is levied, you will hear of this tax right up to Kerala. It was called the Joban Patti or the Joban Kar. And the Joban Kar meant that if you are a Koli female, then to cover your breast, you have to wear a choli. To cover your breast, if you want to cover your breast, you have to pay tax. Otherwise, you cannot cover your breast. And this was very humiliating, obviously. So they, in large numbers, they protested, etc., and they migrated from that region in a big way to various parts of the surrounding areas. So a lot of these Sonkolis, they have migrated from the Raigad, etc., the Chaul region, and then they have then come into Mumbai. And you will find that they are very different in shape, in body form, etc. Once you go into the Kolifada, you will find two body types very prominent. There are various body types, but you will find two very prominent. One is the dark, stocky body type, and there is the tall, lean, fair body type. And those tall, lean, fair people, they claim that they are the Son Kolis, and they come from, but of course now they have intermarried into various regions, so you cannot really distinguish one from the other. When we go into the next section, now again I am taking you back to this Kolivada. This is Varli Kolivada and this is Golfa Devi again. She is interpreted as Gorivali Mataji, and this is done by the Wagri community of Gujarat, and they are called the Devi Pujak Samaj. This Hadkai Ma temple Kotha, this is that Kotha in Gujarat, this is their original goddess. And you will find these, the Wagri community are those women and men who take old clothes and give you, fresh vessels, utensils in exchange. And if you go to Thana or Mulund near the station, you will find the huge market of old clothes there. All of them belong to the Wagri community of Gujarat, and they have all migrated. This is the Hadkai Mata in Kalol. This is the Kalol district in Kotha, where Kotha is located. They were engaged in various forms of trade all over India, extremely migratory people, forest hunters, itinerant traders. They worship goddesses, origin myths, but they did not fit into the caste or the tribe, either code, because some actually claim that they came from Arabia, somewhere like that. So their ambiguous marginality picked up by the British and articulated into a fantasy of occult criminality. And this has been one of the features of our country, that the tribes which really harassed the British were clubbed into criminal tribes. This was one aspect. The other was that when the British came here, they had some ideas about what is work. And they could not categorize work of several communities in our country. And they did not define it as work. They thought this is all criminal. And whichever thing they did not understand, there were something like 184 tribes which were marked into the criminal tribes thing. This Wagri community harassed the British in big ways, and they were put into the criminal tribes section. So they became a criminal tribe. And they were into hunting, they were into taking old clothes, selling them, etc. And because the British could not understand all this, so we will come to this again. But the Wagri community is a very interesting community to study. Now, there was another criminal tribe, and that was the Mahadev Kolis. And the Mahadev Kolis also were part of a criminal tribe. Now, why would the Mahadev Kolis be part of a criminal tribe? And you get the reason here. This is Jawhar state. Now, remember that the Mahadev Kolis are not fisher folk. Only the Son Kolis are fisher folk. All the rest have nothing to do with fishing per se directly. They are not fisher Koli. So these Mahadev Kolis are here at the Jawhar state. This is where Jawhar is. This is Mokhada. You can see this is Nashik here. This is our Dahanu region, Tarapur, etc. Right bang here in the middle is Jawhar. And this was a very prominent kingdom. It was founded in 1343. And this state has some very interesting aspects to it. And if you go to Jawhar, do look at this state. It is worth studying. At one point, a Muslim element, Islamic element entered into the family, the Mukne family, which is actually the Jawhar Kolis. So these Kolis entered here, and one of them converted into Islam because he wanted to marry the daughter of one of the rulers there. So he converted, but he continued to remain king here. After he died, his sons were not allowed to take over, and his brother's son had to be taken over. So he became the king. But the worship in the local dargah is still conducted first by the king, and the king still exists. He is still, although he is not called king, because that passed away in 1947 after we became independent. So we find that this particular king here, he was part of the Maratha power, but then he broke away from the Maratha power. That when Chhatrapati Shivaji, was on his raid at Surat, it was this king who supported that raid because it goes from this region. The Marathas slowly, and they had a fight with the Mukhnes, and they started to strangle them with taxes and levies and fines, etc. The entire Mukhne family, they had to release control. And in 1782, the Raja was allowed to retain for himself a very small territory in the hills. And that's all that was left. But he resisted both the Marathas as well as the British in a very big way. And it is the Mahadev Kolis who made the British entry into our side of the country very, very difficult for the Marathas as well as the British. Till they were called criminal tribes. And at some point they began to be called criminal tribes, and they were persecuted very seriously. But they were really seriously causing a problem. So at the reign of Patang Shah IV, the British decided to make amends. And you will find that they helped them build schools and colleges and build roads, etc. Till the 1905, when Patang Shah IV was there, the whole place had improved remarkably, and Jawar became a very important state at that point, but completely under the control of the British. To the extent that he became a lieutenant, and he was, of course, given this huge salute when the World War ended, because of the support that they gave during the war. You find that today, Mahendra Singh Rao, he lives in Pune now, he is the surviving heir of this particular family. And every year at Jawar, they have a big festival. The Mahadev Kodis and the Warli community, they are the communities which work there. And it is a very big festival. There is a Peer, there is a Dargah there, where the first chadar is laid by Mahendra Singh Rao. And the traditions continue in that part of the world. So now we come to the last section, which is this whole question of Ekvira, because Ekvira kept popping up again and again as a Koli goddess, and we wanted to see what this was again. We found that Ekvira is not restricted to Koli. It is not exclusively a Koli goddess, like the Sat Asras or the Vetal Dev or the Brahman Dev or the Chere Dev for that matter. It is not exclusively a Koli goddess. This is Ekvira at Chandrapur, Ekvira Mata Mandir. This is Ekvira at Amravati. And the form is the same. So, where is this Ekvira coming from? And we found that the whole question of Ekvira is probably connected to the Koli alignment with the Shiv Sena. And it is, we know that the Thakres considered Ekvira as a family goddess. And, it was a time when they went there and built on the Ekvira temple at, in this place. Here, this is Karle, and the helipad was built for Balasaheb Thackeray to come there. So, Ekvira became prominent only during that time when Ananta Tare was the MLA, and he wanted to impress that, okay, this is our goddess. So, the whole worship of Ekvira caught up in a very big way. And suddenly now, in the last 5 or 6 years, it is gradually tempering down. And the Kolis are now again spreading out in different ways. So we find that something very interesting happening here. What are the points that emerged out of this very broad work? I mean, I could just go on, but one of the things which we found was that the religious practice and the livelihood of these Kolis is very interlinked, very closely linked. So, for instance, today in Worli Koliwada, instead of Golfa Devi, it is the Sai Baba temple which you will find has the most donations, has the most festivals, has the biggest festival, etc. It is not Golfa Devi. In fact, the Golfa Devi is struggling hard to get the money so that the temple can be completely renovated. So the religious practice and livelihood of the Kolis constantly changes. It changes depending on their requirements. One of the things which we observed, and this is something which we find across India, that uh, we are very syncretic in our religious faith. So it is normal for us to worship different deities at different times depending on our needs and requirements. So it is absolutely normal for anybody amongst us to go to a Durga because I want a son, then go to a Durga temple because I want a better wife, and then go to the Shani temple because my money is running out, and go to Hanuman temple because something like that. And we are, these deities, we keep shifting, we keep changing. This syncretic behavior is very clearly seen among the Kolis. It is demonstrably seen. We also see that we are very migratory people, and the Kolis have migrated remarkably over the last, even even in the last 100 years, they have remarkably migrated. There is a sense of inclusivity that you see in the Kolis, and we see that again in all our communities, almost all our communities, that, this whole question of endogamous marriages, etc., is not is not the rule. The rule seems to be intermarriage, and we do marry within each other, and our boundaries are not so rigid that we do not change. And then there is this whole aspect of stigmatization after the British came, and this colonial stigmatization is something which is very bothersome. So when we looked at the Kolis, we found that there are various aspects to the Kolis which give us an understanding of how we are going to describe our world. And these are not exceptions. These are in fact probably the rules that our religious practice, our syncretic behavior, our migratory behavior, our inclusivity is probably the rule. It is not the exception. And the Kolis and both the Vishwakarma community, they pointed it out to us. I think that is the baseline of what the Kolis are. That's our study was spanned from 2004, and it continues now. So those are the primary findings which I've shared. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. It was really fascinating to see the way you sliced and diced up the community and laid forth all the similarities and the dissimilarities. Thank you, everyone, for the questions. There are quite a few. Can we start off on the questions right away, Sanjay?
Sure.
Okay. Was there a Kolivada at Umar Khadi and at Baucha Dakka? That was the question.
Baucha Dakka, yes, but Umar Khadi we did not.
There was a question from Sandeep Daisarkar. He wanted you to repeat which were the Kolivadas in South Bombay and in Sashti.
South Bombay, you have Kolaba, then you have near Mahim, then Girgaon and Badwar Park, where the railway offices are there.
Yes.
When you look at Kolivadas, like I said, we tend to see it from our landed point of view. So for the Kolis, if you talk to them, they'll say Trombe is here. So what they mean is from the sea it is here. We would think of if I put you in Kolaba and if I tell you, okay, go to Trombe, you will be horrified. You will say, my God, 2.5 hours of travel is what I will take to go there. For the Kolis, just take a boat, quickly drive down. For them, these areas are in their memory. Of course, the younger Kolis don't have these memories, but you talk to the older Kolis, and for them, even today you have these Kolis. When you talk to them, they start to cry, because for them, from Worli to Dharavi is a boat ride. That Worli depot was actually a place where the boats were kept, and you just took a boat and quickly swish. In about 10 minutes, you were in Dharavi. And if you go to Dharavi now, actual Dharavi Kolivada, you will find something very interesting. The Dharavi Kolivada is in a bowl, whereas that was a high point. And the Kolis are at the top of that high point. Today, the Kolis are at the bottom of the high point, and there are high rises and buildings on this side. Just to give you an example of this Dharavi Kolivada, very fascinating place. Dharavi Kolivada, the name of the Patil is Father Francis. His name is Francis Patil. Okay, and Francis Patil for Ashadi and Ekadashi walks to Pandharpur and comes back.
Well, it just reiterates what you said about syncretism.
Yeah, and it is. He says, of course. I mean, what is the problem? For him, it is completely normal. And I was witness to a marriage in Koliwada, in Dharavi Koliwada, and I was fascinated by what they did. There was a Christian Koli and there was a Hindu Koli, and I don't remember exactly. I think the girl was Christian and the boy was Hindu. So they were standing. The parents were standing, and the patil asked, "Okay, so do you want to convert?" So the Hindu fellow says that no, you see, my mother is this, that. So okay, so then the Christian Koli woman, she said, okay, I'll convert. Okay, so that then and there, so they call some guy who was wearing a dhoti and a tilak and all that. So probably a Brahmin. So he called him. He holds the girl's hand in his hands and he recites the Gayatri mantra 11 times, and she's Hindu. That's it. Over.
Wow.
That's it.
Such ease of
I,
movement, such fluidity.
I met Michael Koli at Dharavi Koliwada. I mean, those of you who are interested, just go there, look for Michael Koli. Michael Koli became a Christian at the age of something like 55, because when the father-in-law was about to die, the father-in-law, not the father-in-law was about to die, and he said, I am very afraid of being burnt on the fire. I don't want to be burnt on the fire. Just ensure
Uh-huh.
that I am not burnt. So everybody was panicked. Said, what? We are Hindus, we have to burn. Why don't you understand? He said, no burn. So on the deathbed, that man was converted to Christianity.
Okay.
The problem was he's converted to Christianity, but only a Christian can bury a Christian. And he didn't have a son. So this fellow said, okay, then I will change, I'll become a Christian. So he becomes a Christian. Now, in that family, the father-in-law is a Christian, this man is a Christian, his wife is a Hindu, his daughters are Hindu. They worship Christmas and they celebrate Gokulashtami also.
Wow. Wow. I wish there were more people like that, don't you?
I
Uh,
think this is the rule, not the exception, which is
no,
what I'm trying to say. I don't
correct.
know.
Question from Fleur D'Souza was: were there or are there any Kolivada around Mazgaon?
Yeah, there are. See, what has happened is that they are no longer Koli Vada. The Kolis are still staying there. So, for instance, Sion is a good example. The Kolis are there. You will find Kolis there, but now they are overwhelmed by other communities.
Okay.
One of the phenomena which did happen in Mumbai, this happened somewhere in the 1960s, 70s. We see it in all the Kolivadas. These Kolivadas are given Gauthan status, which means that they are like a village within the municipal corporation. If somebody dies in the Kolivada, the old resident of the Kolivada, the death certificate is issued by the Patil. It is not issued
Okay.
by the BMC. Or a birth certificate issued by the Patil. But what happened was that they cannot sell the land. Then they needed money, and there was no money because the environment was such that there was not enough fish. So they began to rent their places to other people. By the time we went there in 2004 and in Worli, also somewhat in Kolivada, the Kolis were outnumbered 1:10 by other communities.
Okay.
Now, I'll give you a very simple cultural impact of this. The Kolis, because they're out at sea, normally all their festivals are late in the night and right up to the early morning. That is how they have their festivals. So all Holi, etc., is celebrated like this. But once this urban thing came in and these other communities came, they invoked the law that after 10 p.m., no noise.
Mm-hmm.
So now the Koliwadas don't celebrate Koli festivals anymore.
Sad.
Because they're outnumbered 10:1. So now if you look at the Koliwadas, you will not find a Koli corporator because the demographic has changed.
Changed.
This
Okay.
guy I told you about, that VB Garodikar Chau. He was the Koli mayor of Mumbai in 1960s.
Okay.
Then you don't find any prominent Kolis in the political class because they're politically outnumbered in terms of sheer number. Demographically, they're outnumbered.
Okay. The next set of questions is in connection with religious beliefs. You mentioned that the original Mumbai Devi temple stood at VT, and the question was: is there anything left of the original Mumbai Devi temple at the original site? I think the answer to that is no. So we can move on. Uh, uh, why do the Kolis worship Devi and not Shiva and Vishnu?
Maharashtra has a tradition of female worship. It is not just the Kolis. You if you go to Pune or if you go to Thana or Nashik, you will find female goddesses very rampant. Maharashtra has a tradition of female worship,
Okay.
and this is something which is very even when the child is born on the fifth day, on the seventh day, on the 13th day, all those things are female worship, and many of these goddesses are malevolent goddesses. So
Yes.
these water goddesses essentially are the very simple thing. You have been living in water for 9 months and suddenly you come out. So those water goddesses are very upset with you that you have left my territory and gone somewhere. So you have to appease them. So these are traditions which are there, and the worship of female goddesses is across the board.
Across.
Like I
Okay.
said, it is shifting to male. The male gods are taking over, and Dr. Kosambi made a very interesting study, and when he pointed out that many of the places where women are not allowed today are actually places where the worship was fundamentally done by the women, not by the men.
Wow.
So
Okay.
even, I mean, if you are talking of Shaiva worship, the peak of Shaiva worship is Rudra. And Rudra originally was not supposed to be said by the men at all. It is supposed to be said by the women in the evenings at sunset.
Mm-hmm.
Pradosha. So at that time, Rudra is supposed to say it is said it is supposed to be done by the woman, not by the men. And today you will find that women hardly do it, and only men only perform it.
So staying with religious beliefs, are Golfa Devi, Harba Devi, Sakba Devi part of the seven asanas,
No,
seven
they are.
sat asanas?
Yeah, no. Sat asaras will never have a form. They will just be these stones, and there will be an eight Vetal Dev. That is how Sat asara will be. Anywhere you go, you see a Sat asara temple. There are some temples on the highways. There's a very big temple, but they will just be these stones. Golfa Devi and Harba Devi and Sakba Devi, why they're interesting is because they are very well cut and beautifully crafted. And of course, I mean, I don't have the iconographic sense. I am a community person, so I study community and communication, but not iconography. But from the from what I have seen and discussed, I find that okay, they do have a lot of Shaiva symbols around them,
Okay.
but iconographically they are very different. They are properly crafted. Even Mumbai Devi is not a statue; it is a volcanic rock, and the
Correct.
mark is different. Khada Devi, if you go to Khada Devi, you will see the Satasara pattern. There are 7 stones laid down, and there is an 8th Vetal Devi.
So which brings me to the next question: why are most of their depictions volcanic rock formations?
You see, the Koli is at sea, and because he is at sea, these luxuries of getting a sculpture to do your statues is not going to be possible.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
they can literally make a deity or a god out of a stone tree. They can do it,
Okay.
and you will find that their livelihood patterns affect and change the way their worship pattern change. So they are absolutely comfortable. So right now I have got this problem, and I think this deity will solve it. They will go there. It doesn't really. Yeah, they don't have any inhibitions on that. No? So, for instance, one narrative is that who are the Sat Asras? The Sat Asras are 7 sisters of a king who was extremely oppressive. So the sisters ran away. They ran away from Gujarat, and their ship crashed on the Bombay Islands. And each goddess went to each island. Now, by that logic, if you talk to them, they'll tell you that Mount Mary is actually Mount Mauli,
Yes.
and therefore she's a Koli goddess. She's not a Christian goddess at all. So a lot of
Correct.
Kolis go to Mount Mary. They worship her as Mount Mauli. They don't think it is Mount Mary, and they do all the rituals that they perform are the Christian rituals. They'll have candles and all that. But in their head, this is Mount Mauli. This is not Mount Mary. So so Prabhadevi is actually a Koli goddess for them. So they are very flexible in that sense.
So you mentioned Hindu Kolis, you mentioned Christian Kolis, and you did mention about one community, one person converting to Islam. Are there many Muslim Kolis? Was the question.
Not here, not in Mumbai. We don't see many Muslim Kolis in Mumbai. We see them in Gujarat, but not here, not among the.
And do Renuka Devi and and Manmala Devi figure in their beliefs?
Actually, Renuka Devi doesn't at all figure in their thing, but they worship Ekvira, and Ekvira essentially is Renuka. They can't explain. But then what they say is that this Ekvira is actually a you know form of Parvati, and they
Okay.
worship her as. If you go to Ekvira, you will find something very interesting. The CKPs worship Ekvira, the Buddhists worship Ekvira, Neo Buddhists worship Ekvira, and they worship Ekvira as the mother of Buddha.
I see.
Yeah, so suddenly you will find, if you go to Ekvira, you will suddenly find women and men dressed in all white, and they come with candles, and they offer candles, and then you wonder, who are these people? How come candles? Then you ask them, then they are Buddhists. So they worship Ekvira as the mother of Buddha. So Ekvira has this, the goddess has these various shades in Karla, but these at Amravati, etc., it is a purely
Okay.
Hindu worship. Yeah, it is a purely Hindu.
Okay. Do they have any rituals which feature wells, considering water and close and relationship?
Not really. They coconut is the key thing, and they are very clear about sacrifice. So they do sacrifices. In fact, in Worli till almost end of 1990s, there is a very interesting ritual which all Koliwadas perform. Now they have gone into hiding in the sense that they don't declare it because PETA starts making a noise. But
Oh,
but the ritual is like this: that in front of Golfa Devi, they cut, depending on what is your desire, etc. The village donates money, and the entire village cuts ram, goat, fowl, etc. in front of the goddess. Then this is put into a huge plate, and huge meaning about a meter big plate, and then these plates are offered when we saw Vetal Dev near the head. So just further down from there, there is another deity. So it is kept there for 3 days, and it
okay,
is believed that whatever the bad things and all, they come and take it away, and then the remaining is given to all the people in the village as a prasad. And for
okay,
those 3 days, entire Kolivada is shut. They shut the doors, windows, etc. They sit at home. They don't go out at all. This is performed. This used to be performed every year. Then it became every 3 years. Now they perform it, but they don't tell anybody that they are doing this. In Mud Island also it is performed. This same ritual is performed. In fact, something very interesting has happened over the years is that Golfa Devi has become so vegetarian that now the biggest festival of Golfa Devi is actually on Shakambari Purnima.
I see.
And Shakambari, Shak is vegetable, so she is a goddess of vegetables.
Okay,
So the worship, so she is, there is a abhishek of milk and all that which is done on Shakambari Purnima, a big festival, but completely vegetarian. And a lot of Kolis have become complete vegetarian and teetotalers. They worship Datta Guru or Swami Samartha. They have started doing that. So the worship patterns have changed dramatically.
and that's part of the fluidity which you mentioned.
Yeah.
Is it true that Peshwa Raghunath Rao built the Pap Vimochan temple during his exile in these islands?
No, no evidence of that.
No evidence. Okay. There are two more dargahs near Worli Kolivada, and they are simply called Dargah 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Is there any connection with the
No,
one which you showed over there?
The Dargah which I am mentioning, even in Mud Island, you will find these are within the jurisdiction of the Kolivada.
Okay.
So these are intrinsic parts of the Kolivada itself. They are not, these two Dargahs which you are mentioning, the 1 and 2, they are outside the Kolivada. They are not in the Kolivada.
Okay.
They are, once you come out of the Kolivada and you descend down to the road on the main side, then you get to go. This one is bang inside. I mean, you can't miss it. So in Mud also, you have the same Kolivada, same Dargah, similar Dargah. And in Mud, you actually have to take a boat to go to that place. And if you have a child, if you're getting married, if you are, any good thing is happening in your family, the first thing you have to do, you don't go to Golfa Devi. That's a very interesting phenomenon. So if you find that your wife is pregnant, you don't go to Golfa Devi. You first go to the Peer, you offer your coconut. It is called thadi. So there are 5 coconuts or 15 coconuts, whatever, they're strung in a thread, and they are offered to the Dargah. So it is offered to Dargah, and then you go to Golfa Devi.
Okay. You mentioned some Kolis who are from landlocked parts of the country. So, are there many in other landlocked parts of the country? You mentioned some parts of Gujarat, etc.
Yes.
So, where would one find Kolis in landlocked
They are in
areas?
You will find the Koli, the Kolis in Madhya Pradesh, completely landlocked. You will find the Kolis in Dhule. Even in Maharashtra, you will find Kolis in Amravati, Dhule, all these places, Chandrapur. These are also Kolis, but they are not fisher folk.
You mentioned an African dargah. So Siddharth wanted to know if one which is called Siddhi Baba near Kirti College, is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
an
yeah,
African
yeah,
one?
that is the one. So if you ever go there in the night about 9:30, 10, you will hear the music coming from there. They dance around that place and they have these drums like this and they dance with that drum and they perform the same thing at on Hanuman Jayanti at this place. Now, for instance, Hanuman Jayanti is a very interesting festival at Koliwada, Varli Koliwada. Two communities are performing all kinds of rituals there in which the local Kolis are not at all participating. So one is I told you the Peer.
Yes.
So the Patil goes there in the evening and offers the offerings and that's it. The Koli participation ends. After that, Muslims take over.
Oh.
On Hanuman Jayanti in the morning, before sunrise, the Wagri community, which we discussed, the Gujarat Wagri, they start coming from all over Mumbai, right from Dahanu. They walk. And they, throughout the day, they make offerings of goat and fowl, etc. at Golfa. They almost take over the temple. And if you go there, you will find the Kolis sitting in their houses looking out of the window at these people. They have nothing to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
So, just imagine this, that, there is this goddess who you worship every day, etc. And a host, thousands of people come from somewhere and they take over the temple and they worship it the way they want. And after that, they just clean up and they go away. And then the Kolis come back again. So this Hanuman Jayanti is a very interesting day to go to Koliwada and, see this phenomenon that people who deal with these garments. So one of the interesting factors is that they have these huge poles, and huge meaning about 50, 40 feet tall poles, wooden poles, and long strips of cloth which are say about 50 or 80 feet long. They wave them. So, and they are normally saffron or yellow or red, those colors. So you have all these Gujarati Wagris coming there from before sunrise right up to 4 o'clock in the evening. So it is all saffron, red, and all noise. And then as the evening descends, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, suddenly you find people in burqa, long beard, skull cap. They start walking up the same road and they go a little further up to the dargah and then the Qawwali starts. So very dramatic change, and the Kolis are not participating in any of this.
As you're speaking, I'm just thinking, shouldn't something be done to popularize the syncretic of this culture, on a much more broader level?
See, this is a very, one thing is it is very politically loaded because it challenges the whole idea of secularism. The whole question, there was a very interesting debate discussion at some point, some 10 years ago, Achin Vanaik was in it. Very interesting discussion that are we secular or are we syncretic? And if we accept that we are syncretic, then it explains the behavior that you go to a government institution and you find Satyanarayana and it's normal. Fine. And then you find that my mother goes to Mount Mary on Wednesdays, and on Friday she goes to Haji Malang Baba. On Tuesday she goes to Siddhivinayak. It's normal. So, are we syncretic, and would promoting that be more better than forcing secularism on a country where religious belief and practice is directly connected to livelihood?
I think that we'll keep that discussion for another day, secularism versus syncretism, and stay with the questions. So from worshipping Mumba Devi, how did so many local deities come into existence? Is a question from Diksha. What caused this evolution?
See, each one has got their own deities and promoted them in different ways. So I think it has something to do with patrons. So he finds a patron and then the deity grows. And then it just kind of builds up on it. So I think that would explain it. I would explain it in economic terms, that a deity loses a patron and the importance goes away. And the deity gets a patron and suddenly the deity becomes big. So, yeah.
Question from Siddharth. There's a Cheroba temple in New Panvel. Is that associated with Cheredev?
I don't know this temple. I'll have to see, because I'm very curious to know if there are any Cheroba temples, because the temples are just, the deity is just 3 stones or 4 stones. That's all it will be. It will not have a form. That's characteristic. But maybe I don't know this temple. So
And Chedwai Deva was from which dynasty? Would he be from the Shilaras or what?
Shilara, yes.
Okay. Why did Kanochi Angre levy the tax on the Jobanpatti tax when he himself was a Koli?
No, we don't know anything about Kanoji Angre actually. Historically, we don't know much about Kanoji Angre. He just
Okay.
appeared suddenly as a, if you look at in terms of history, we don't know where he. I mean, we don't know things like his parents and his childhood and who. We don't know much. He just appears suddenly out of this thing and he becomes very important. But we do know that the Kolis were, and they are even today, they're fiercely independent people.
Uh-huh.
It is not just that they opposed the Marathas. They opposed the Marathas. They opposed
The British you mentioned.
the Portuguese, and they really harassed them at sea. So Angre had to put them down in some way or the other. So this was, in fact, you will find the forms of the Jobanpatti across the sea. You find this in Kerala also. And, there were instances where the female's breast were cut off because she was found wearing a bodice and not paying taxes. So we know of these instances. They were happening till almost 1800s. There are documented evidence on that. So this Jobanpatti was levied to simply force the Kolis into some kind of subjugation.
Okay.
Because they were not completely for the Marathas.
Sandeep wanted to know, would you be able to tell us a little bit about Hambira Rao and Alu Nakwa? Or are they related to this community at all? If at all, what is the connection?
We know from that Bakhar that they were in Worli, etc. But today there is nothing to say, nothing to show. We don't have any data on that. We can keep speculating, but we really don't know. No idea. Because the only Muslim reference that you find at this place is that Dargah. But we really don't know, when we try to go into the background of this Dargah, look at the paperwork, etc. We don't get too much detail yet. We don't have too much.
So how and why did Holi become so big for the Kolis?
Holi, it is very interesting. They are worshipping Holika. It is the worship of Holika who was burnt. And Holika, if you know the story, then Holika represents something very interesting. She jumped into the fire along with Prahlad. Prahlad was saved and Holika was burnt because Prahlad was a Vishnu worshipper and Holika was a Shaiva worshipper. So they are before that tradition. They are actually worshipping Holika. They worship her. They have rituals by which they worship Holika. So they are before this Vaishnava tradition at all. So many of them will not be. They don't explain these things because they have forgotten or they don't know any longer. They just know that Holika is worshipped. But if you ask them that, okay, but then Holika died, and then what is your view on that? So they don't have a view on it. They are not looking at it.
Asmida's question was, is there any type of architecture which is associated with the Kolis?
No.
Okay.
There are people living at sea, so only their houses are very minimalistic also. Very, very minimal.
Before there are more questions, but before we close, Sandeep's request was if you could show your slide of the Dargah locations again. We'll come back to that after taking all the questions. What are the physical traits or differences between Son Kolis and the Mahadev Kolis? Could you please repeat it, because Logan Rodrigues missed that.
Not really say, but yes, we know that originally somewhere in the past, when their description comes in, Son Kolis tall, fair, slender, and Mahadev Kolis are sturdy, short, and stout.
Amongst the last one was, could you throw some light on the Koliwadas of Thane?
Okay. So Koliwadas of Thane, one of the things which happened to the Koliwadas in Thane is that the railway track went right through them. So now there is, which was not there earlier. So for them, Thane was a composite region, but now it is Thane West, Thane East. And the Koliwadas are now separated by that, so now it is more of police on the east of Thane and the west of Thane. So they do share, and they are a completely different thing from the Son Kolis, because some of them are Vaiti Kolis, and they have different worship patterns. Although they share some features, but they're very different from the Worli and the Dharavi Kolis. The Worli and Dharavi and Kolaba Kolis are more, you could say, older than these Vaiti Kolis.
There was a story, a legend, a belief that a person called Rustam Dorab rounded up and made a band of Kolis to fight against a Siddhi attack sometime in the 1670s, 1680s. Is that substantiated?
No, there is no evidence. Story is there, yes, but no, I mean, we don't have evidence.
Okay. And I think we can treat this as a last question.
Okay.
Is this reason why a supari plant is adorned with haldi kumkum and decked with a highly decorated bow and arrow?
Yeah.
Is that a symbolization of rati?
Yeah, it is.
So thanks so much. It's been fascinating the way you sort of sliced up the community and showed its so many different facets of the community and so many important lessons to learn. I thought, Dr. Ranade, there's so much at the basic level. We are all one. I think that was the message which I derived from it all.